All right, welcome everybody to ATW Live on Monday, and I know what you're all thinking. We're small.
Well,
Uh,
we're confined. I don't know that we're small. I feel that my wide head has never been less flatteringly portrayed. My ears aren't even in the damn shot.
so we're trying, as mentioned in the announcement tonight, we're trying out some things so that we can see if the show will distribute more fluidly to different parts of the internet. Unfortunately, this requires that we make this setup, this portrait setup. If you hate it, let us know, and you won't never see it again, probably. But in the meantime, we're going with it, and hopefully, this will allow more people to see and access the program. It's
Right.
live on Substack, among other places, but there's already a bad omen because Walter doesn't like it. Oh, Mikey says he hates it. Okay, then here we
Well,
go. Yeah, it sucks.
I told Matt before the show that I actually had a dream that it wasn't good. I took a nap this afternoon, and my gypsy grandmother came to me and said, "Don't do the vertical."
Here we go. Look at this. You guys being so close makes you look gay.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
We just no, dude. I am looking at myself and going, "How do I keep my whole head in the shot? How do I not go like that?"
do you feel closer?
Should I ever achieve the level of fame necessary to become a star of a U.S. postage stamp, this is how it will look. However, so this is my audition for the U.S. Postal Service.
So we thank everybody for their indulgence, and we hope that you can express yourselves to the fullest in the comment section about about your feelings. Okay, that's a little better. We're a little bit little less gay.
Yeah, a lot better.
All right, so a lot to get to this week, and I guess we got to start with the whole impending possible war thing. Walter, you're very upset about this. I understand, from what I understand.
Yeah, I am. First of all, the idea that they held their fire with these missiles that can go into Russia for the entire election, until they lost, and then sprung them on us after they did lose, is some sort of outrage that needs addressing. Somebody put up a Foreign Affairs magazine, Council of Foreign Relations magazine article from a couple of years ago, opining that a lame duck president should not be allowed to, conduct or make decisions of this kind during that period if they would seem to contravene the will of the voters and the new president's coalition or constituency. Well, that's exactly what they've done. The people who read Foreign Affairs and maybe even the ones who wrote it are contravening that that guidance.
Yeah, that's an interesting decision. I mean, I almost feel like, when you're the lame duck president, especially if you've been voted out after 4 instead of 8 years.
Especially if you've been judged by the courts to be incapable of standing trial because you're so old. Especially if because your own party has moved you out in some silent coup-like a maneuver to put someone else in because you're so damn old. I mean, and then suddenly you become what? Henry Fonda in Failsafe, where you're able to make the most split second and dire decisions that mankind has offered the human being.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I hear you, but you got to admit that the humor factor on the Biden thing is getting to be pretty good. I mean, if it's true that he actually stuck the party with Kamala out of spite, and now maybe is starting a war out of spite.
Well, I would.
That's almost funny. That's on the verge of funny. I mean, it's probably too serious to be funny, actually.
Well, yeah, it's not funny at all to me because at the risk of sounding like a Jane Fonda or something, this is a country, Ukraine, which now even the New York Times is admitting in its editorial cannot be rescued by the United States.
Right.
It's also a country which Trump has sworn to bring to the peace table with Russia as soon as he's president. Now, that means that there are poor people in Ukraine who may die during this 2 month window. But if they had somehow ran away for the 2 months, wouldn't. And I was saying early on, I'd want an assurance from my commander. Am I fighting a war that is about to end? Because we're losing now. I'm likely to be hurt if I go to the front. And I'd like to know that it's either going to carry on or going to end soon. That's what I'd want to know. The opinion of the Ukrainian soldier is impossible to know. We are completely screened off from it.
I know. I'm reduced to reading like Die Welt and magazines like that to try to get any information, and the Slavic stuff is no use either. So it's a mess.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. If I were in that war zone and dying because of an American electoral situation, I mean, I guess death of any kind, I guess I wouldn't really care at that point. But yeah. It's particularly galling that there are people who are probably going to, lose their lives over what's essentially a political maneuver. But
I mean, he could be bringing peace to this place now. Biden, I mean, he could be starting peace talks if he wanted. That he's not is amazing. That there's going to be this surplus death count that would not have occurred, if the American presidency switched hands 6 weeks earlier is astonishing to me. But more than this, these missiles,
maybe
the ATACMs. Yeah, who in the Office of Acronym Adjustment, there was a prize awarded to whoever. Yeah, I can torture the English language into a acronym that sounds almost like ATACM. Do it, man.
The Army Tactical Missile System, the MGM 140 Army Tactical Missile System.
As a novelist and a short story writer, I'm often in the position of having to devise acronyms.
Mm-hmm.
It's what giving your story or book a title is really fun, but devising acronyms is the second most gimmicky and pleasant job of the novelist. And I always do better than they do. I mean,
what's one of your best acronyms?
Well, don't put me on the spot, dude.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well. In my novel, Up in the Air, the company is called ISM.
That's right.
ISM is International Strategic Management. I mean, that I thought of ISM and they haven't yet shows that Doge has its work cut out for it. There are people who are.
How has no one thought of that yet?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I bought 1,000 shares of ISM this morning.
I know.
No, the ATACMs, I made this reference off the air, and you didn't recall it. Maybe it was for somebody who was, you had to be like in your early teens in the 80s, but it reminded me of the Steakum. Can we remember this product?
Yes, Steakums.
Steakums, right? It was like a really gross frozen steak. And I did eat those, and that's what ATACMs sounds like to me.
And I grew up big and strong, But just as an off-topic suggestion to RFK Jr., I grew up in the world of TV dinners and frozen everything and Chungking products where you had three cans stacked, and you took off the plastic and they became individual cans, and then you dumped them together and the magic happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were a pretty smart and achievement-oriented generation. We were winning the presidential fitness award and things like that.
Oh yeah, no, I remember those. Those were great. Yeah.
So it's not it's healthy junk food that I want, not just health food. I want things in the supermarket that can be thrown in a bag that are so damn good for you and tasty.
Well, the thing is, when you're 11, all calories are good for you. Like, there's nothing that's really bad for you at that age, I don't think. Okay, so let's see. So the war thing, it was announced in. I mean, there was a big New York Times article last week. The Biden allows Ukraine to strike Russia with long range U.S. missiles. Some crazy quotes in here. Zelensky saying today, many in the media are talking about the fact that we've received permission to take appropriate actions, but blows are not inflicted with words. Such things are not announced. The rockets will speak for themselves.
Boy,
And
that is a quote that will probably be on his tombstone. The
yeah,
rockets will speak for themselves. Greek tragedy warns us not to say things like that. Mission accomplished. The rockets will speak for themselves, and so on.
yeah, yeah,
They will, Mr. Zelensky, or whatever your official title is, president. But the fact is, they will both speak, the ones outgoing and the incoming. And it's called a missile conversation, And when missiles are in conversation, sometimes one party wins, and you had better damn hope that you can do it without inflicting so much damage. I would not shoot off one of those things if I was him. I would be like, okay, I've got it in my pocket, but I can probably expect a 3-to-1 response if I go first.
Well, there was already. Let's see. Can we roll that German news video about the attack over the weekend? I think. Hang on a second. Well, we'll come back to that. Here we go. Yeah, here it is.
We begin with breaking news from Ukraine, where Russia has launched a wave of missile attacks across the country. Cities, including Kiev, were hit. These images we're about to see show air defences in the capital downing some of the missiles incoming. Officials in Ukraine say power facilities have been targeted and have announced emergency electricity cuts in Kiev and in other regions.
Okay, so that apparently did happen. There's another story that came out in the Times that Russia bombed the power grid with about 120 missiles and 90 drones. I mean, I don't know. I can't make sense of any of the information that comes out of Ukraine. I don't know how to interpret it. Like, it feels like when they tell me something that Ukraine was attacked, like they're trying to get me upset, so that, in preparation for some news that there's going to be more weapons delivered, or I don't know. I just don't trust any of the information that comes out of there.
Well, maybe our audience and the military-minded among them can get this answer for me, but I don't think he's probably able to shoot those things off himself. If it's such an advanced weapon system, have we already trained them to use it, and do they use it independently of us? It's crazy to me that a president can be elected on basically a platform of, bringing negotiated peace, and then can be undermined by the person who is too old to run and to testify in a trial in his own defense. What? Or
Yeah.
mount his own defense. We now know without a doubt, one of the reasons that I think that the Democrats lost is that they devalued the presidency itself. Why should they care who wins it when they didn't care who had it in the first place? Why should they care that somebody wants the job when they just shuffle it around day by day between whoever is happening to be home? I mean, it wasn't lost on anybody that Biden was down in the Amazon somewhere.
Oh yeah, there was a good somebody did a good, well, I don't know, it was a funny tweet about that. Let's see, what was it? I can't even read it. Yeah, Biden is visiting the Amazon rainforest and starting World War III at the same time. I guess that shows some late stage capability. I don't know about this format. Walter, look at us. Our heads are even missing in this format.
It doesn't jive with the Mystery Science Theater set at all.
It doesn't.
It's gone.
We're gonna have to fix this thing. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Look at our whole expensive graphic, for which we're probably going to get sued at some point, is now.
We took all that legal risk for nothing.
Yeah. Another thing I'm going to say about this, though, is that I watched Dr. Strangelove the other day for a movie project. It's one of those movies that I think I remember, and then every time I watch it, it's better and a little different. And okay, Dr. Strangelove, which was satire then, is now being affirmed in all kinds of ways. What's the name of the mad colonel?
Jack Ripper.
Jack Ripper. Well, yeah. Going on about precious bodily fluids. Well, so is Kennedy. I mean, what is RFK but the precious bodily fluids cabinet member? We're going to be taking the fluoride back out. Thanks, Jack Ripper. A prophet without honor in his own country. Number two, it's portrayed as the darkest satire that someone would lock themselves on an Air Force base and order a strike. But somebody has locked themselves in the White House or the Amazon or whatever a couple of months before they leave office and decided they're going to hand over missiles that strike inside Russia. Man, in my entire lifetime, we have never fired a missile into Russia, or at least
just in the movies we did it,
or at least had an American proxy shoot one of our missiles into Russia. I mean, we're blasting past all these norms that we supposedly honor. So,
even Reagan didn't even hint at doing that,
Reagan was walking around with Gorbachev half the time. It was a wonderful two-shot. They were together all the time. We're not even sure that Biden has ever spoken to Putin during the entire administration.
Well, they might have told him he was speaking to Putin. They could have had a stand-in in front of him. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing.
Right? No, it could be one of those prank callers who's always, calling up a senator and pretending to be,
right, like the jerky boys.
Yeah. Biden's probably talking to Putin right now. He probably does every night before bed. Tell me a Russian folk tale, Vladimir.
Look, and the other thing that's weird about this, I mean, I don't know how bent out of shape we want to get about this, but remember when Trump got elected the first time, there was all this hemming and hawing about, oh my God, he's violating the Logan Act by opening up a line of communication with Russia.
Well, that's supposedly why Flynn was prosecuted, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they didn't prosecute him under. They considered it, right? That was going to be one of their lines of possible attack. But this is the same principle. Like, the whole idea is you don't want to have somebody conducting a separate foreign policy. Now, this is still technically their administration, but the whole idea is, by tradition, you don't do a different policy when you know that there's going to be a new one and suddenly in a couple of months.
Dude, if they put troops into El Salvador right now, I'd be troubled. Having someone else launch our missiles into Russia in this cute sort of sideways war we're having, where we're trying to destabilize the Russian leadership by perhaps authorizing the first attack on Moscow since World War II. Right.
It does boggle the mind that they're trying to do that. And it is funny that you bring up this Dr. Strangelove thing, because remember the great story about that movie was that it was a serious script to begin with. It was so close to satire that Kubrick could just twist a few things with it and turn it into it. And that tells you how far away reality is from black humor at all times.
Peter Sellers as the president, if he were not Peter Sellers and he wasn't also playing, the Kissinger like game theory German Nazi holdover, would by his dialogue be a completely straight American president,
Mhm.
except for little bits where he's like, I don't know, he calls
Dimitri.
up Dimitri, I'm fine, you're fine, I'm fine. Are you fine? Listen, Dimitri. But our guys don't even talk. Dr. Strangelove was a movie about diplomacy compared to what we do now.
I know. I mean, even the lunacy of the Cuban Missile Crisis, where they had to talk in a kind of subterranean way. Like, we're not even really doing that here. We have proxies get up and make sort of chest puffing announcements through the media. But
was there one Soviet premier who we refused to talk to in the way that we refused to talk to Putin? I mean, I can't think of one. I was seeing them all the time on TV as a kid. Here's Khrushchev, here's Gorbachev, here's Brezhnev, here's whatever.
Yeah, right. Chernenko and Andropov for the 10 minutes they were in office.
The idea that America can elect a president who's pretty strongly skeptical of this whole adventure, and that the next thing they do is have Blinken come out and say, we're going to give every dollar we possibly can to Ukraine in these next couple of months. What? And then, oh, by the way, we're going to authorize the launch of long-range missiles at Russian cities.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. And it's the worst thing that they've probably done since the election. I mean, I guess the griping about the appointments, it does pale in comparison, right?
Well, I mean, have any of the appointments suggested that we should, do something like this? Not yet. One apparently has a cross on his arm.
His chest.
Right.
He's got a big pec thing with right. It's pretty weird looking.
Well, George Shultz supposedly had one on his butt. Maybe it was a Princeton tiger. No, I'm not kidding. I think he had a Princeton tiger on his butt. But that was in the days of discreet Ivy League tattoos, and this is big honking Las Vegas hard rock casino tattoos. That
Oh my God, there are so many bad jokes that could be written about the tattoos that might have been in certain places on old school politicians. We'll have to leave that for written format, I think. But yeah, no, this week, in addition to that, so this missile thing, Trump came out with a statement basically saying that,
give me a call.
Yeah, and this is the thing that we have to avoid.
Well, I will tell you, one of the reasons I'm upset about it is that 6 weeks ago, perhaps, someone extremely high in the Trump campaign was having a conversation with me, and I said, what are your big concerns? And I was talking about winning or losing the election.
Mm-hmm.
And this person said, well, we're a little worried that they're leaving the door open for us, frankly. And what happens when we walk through it? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they launch a war.
Oh, right. And then we get to own it. Is that the idea?
Yeah. And I remember thinking, yeah, that would worry me too, actually. if I thought that they were doing less than they could to win, and I was going to be walking into a trap of global proportions. And I thought, you have to be paranoid in politics. Well, yesterday I found out this person was right.
Yeah. Yeah, that would worry me too, because the degree to which they'll stoop has not yet surprised me. I mean, actually, I'm sorry, it continually surprises me. So I would worry that they would find a new low to hit, like starting a war on the way out the door. But it hasn't happened yet. What do we have here? Is this the Babylon B? Oh yeah. in last-ditch attempt to prevent Trump from taking office, Democrats start World War III. Yeah, I mean, that's fun. That's reasonably funny, I would say.
But it's not reasonably funny because it was basically the plot of every satirical war movie for decades. And America seems to have lost its collective memory. Can't we get the AI to write a script based on all those old fail-safe Strangelove and other, science fiction short stories and so on? Because a politicized World War III. Matt, when I was a sophomore in college, I wrote a play about it called Late Modern. And it was 1980 at Princeton University. Few people were able to attend, but those who do, I'm sure, remember it and will be writing me. And it was a conversation between a president and his national security advisor, let's say Biden and Jake Sullivan, about, what would really happen and how bad would it be. And then at the end, he just casually says, I think it's a yes, and then they have dinner or something.
Wow.
So I mean, that was lodged so deep in me that I was writing imitative sophomore one-act plays about it. And to grow up and see it just sort of pass unremarked. And I went, oh, the Democrats now, really, I mean, they are just absolutely all out, the full-on party of war. They have eaten the entire chicken and it's in their stomach and they're belching up blood, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, maybe we didn't pay enough attention to that transformation in the last. I mean, they were never not a war party, right? Like there was some symbolic resistance, I guess, to the idea of going into Iraq. But in our lifetimes, how really anti-war have they ever been? But this transformation to becoming, full-on David Frum, Dick Cheney style, expansionists and interventionists, everywhere, and with this hyper-aggressive posture. Especially in Russia, there were so many things going on during the last 4 or 5 years that maybe we undersold the seriousness of that. I don't know.
Matt, there were universities that proudly announced they would no longer be teaching Russian literature. I mean, not universities, but colleges and educational institutions. We made a virtue of absolute ignorance of Russia in the last 4 years. To pay attention to Russia, to look at it as actual legitimate country, was seen as some sort of betrayal of our duty to be ignorant about anything that they wanted us to just blindly, bluntly, and instinctively react to. It would simply slow our reflexes to have read their novels.
That's a good way to put it. Our betrayal of our duty to be ignorant. Like, remember, I remember during the U.S. Open this year, I was watching the Open. Was it this year or last year? And there was one of the tennis players from Russia. It couldn't be Zverev because I think he's actually a German citizen. But one of them, I can't remember which one. They just had his name, but they left the flag off.
Right.
So there's no nationality. Like, come on, like, really, how petty can you possibly be? Like, we're going to non-identify the nationality of a participant in the sporting event.
I'm surprised they didn't blur their faces so that they no longer look like individuals. It's so much harder to kill somebody if you know what their nose looks like. We Americans are fools in a lot of ways, but in one way particular, when we're told to look down, when we're told to put our head in the sand by the people who want to do something bad, we often comply. Yeah. And then, and then we're told a story while our head's in the hole about what's going on. And that's the whole Ukraine war, as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to have to search 17 Telegram channels full of spies and disinformation agents to find out some basic thing But we had to do it. And the network news, which I mean, I grew up with, dude, every time I ate my damn TV dinner as a kid, I had to sit and watch Vietnam on CBS News. I mean, when I wasn't watching the University of Minnesota on fire in protests, I would have to watch some, depressing interview with a general with helicopters taking off and, some stock footage of stretchers, and then get a body count for dinner every freaking night.
Well, right, but that was during a time when they were at least trying to show you something about something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, and even during the Iraq period, when they were so heavily regulating, everybody was embedded except for a couple of reporters on the American side. You still got a good sense of what was going on, in the war. I mean, you still had a pretty decent idea that it wasn't holding, that the population didn't like us. When bad things happen, we heard about it pretty quickly. And now it's just this mess where somebody who even thinks about writing something negative about or anti-narrative gets raided by the FBI, which is crazy. I mean, similar to the rating of that, whatever that betting service was. That story was crazy.
Polymarket, yeah.
Polymarket, my God, yeah.
Well,
just a lot of weirdness out there.
Somebody on Twitter last night, I launched some raging tweets on this subject, because it really does bother me 2 weeks after an election to be told we're going to be shooting missiles by proxy into Russia for the first time in history.
Right.
It just bugs me, it would bug me 2 weeks before an election, but it really bugs me 2 weeks after an election that the people doing it lost. So then two things happen. Number one, I get absolute rain of obscene automated responses from whoever is coordinating,
the troll bots.
Yeah. It's just crazy. They practically threaten your life. And number two, I got three things. Number two, I got a lot of people saying that story's not right. That's incorrect. That can't be true. And then I got one from a military guy who I don't dislike, but he's like, it's better late than never, is what he said.
Oh my God.
And I was like, better late than never. How about never? But how about better late and not done at all? I mean, which shows that this was some political consideration the whole time.
Right. I mean, what kind of a person thinks like that, though? I mean, better. Why would you personally want this to get worse? I don't know. I mean,
one of those evil Krasenstein brothers who's on Twitter.
Oh God, yeah.
For I don't know, for some strange reason. I guess you get as much money from Twitter for pissing people off as you do for enlightening them.
I got to bring this up, Walter. Today, I was on one of the AI programs because a friend. It's a long story. A friend of mine tried to write something creative, and it like clapped back at him in this really insidious way. But I was testing it, and I wrote. I was basically like toying with the idea of a devil's dictionary type of thing, and I wrote a few examples, and it instantaneously spat back like 9 things that were better than I could write and funnier, like in a human way. And so the reason I bring this up is I think there's a AI Krasenstein convergence that is going to happen where the AI surpasses the Krasenstein ability to, come up with some human commentary. I think that's in our near future.
So AI's training sets are particularly full of invective and nastiness. That's I want to see, now that we have AI and things like this, I want to see a quantified measure of how mean versus how positive human beings have been over history.
That's interesting.
Are we 2/3 mean, and 1/3 kittens, or people have always accused me of being negative, and I thought, well, am I more negative
Compared to
than?
what?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Well, that was when I was a member of the Mormon Church, and that it wasn't hard to get that label as
right.
in Mormon youth groups. If it wasn't the prettiest night ever, every friggin' night, you were negative. But anyway, I see all this ghoulish stuff, and there was a guy last night who said, if Putin even dares to shoot to unleash a nuke, here's what's going to happen. And he had that animation, animation that's been all over the place of colored lines of light coming up out of America. Part of them, they come out of America, and then they come out of the Pacific. I suppose those are from submarines, and then they just rain down in perfect targeted fashion on cities. And he showed the entire mainland of Russia being absolutely burnt to crisp.
If everyone can pardon our tiny heads for a second, this is it's the Jake Bro tweet.
And this is an Air Force guy. He didn't make that's not a wrestling name. Jake Bro.
No, that's not the right one. That's Bolton. We got a different one. Let's see. We'll find it. It's an ominous picture.
Can we combine them so that missiles come out of Bolton's head to strike Russia?
That I think that's probably what his fantasy is. Yeah, here it is. Right? This is it.
When the seas are rolling in, when the stars are shining clear, when the ghosts are howling near.
Oh, the hi-hat. How fucked up do you have to be to make this?
It's you and me together, leave for higher ground. You are all alone, just listen to.
Is that a real time?
Yeah.
We fall asleep when we hear. We fly away when we hear. We travel far when we hear.
All right, I think we get it. I mean, that's pretty horrifying, though. And it's the creepy techno music is actually makes it worse.
Dr. Strangelove wouldn't have dared. They wouldn't have dared make it that broad with dance music and so on. Peter Sellers in his wheelchair, saluting in time. This is evil, what we're seeing. I know young people who watch that and have no freaking idea what it represents. No idea what it represents. I remember when we had to read Hiroshima, the John Hersey.
Yeah, the John Hersey book. Great book. Yeah.
A whole issue of the New Yorker was devoted to it.
Right.
This deep, this deep dive into what happened on the ground in Japan. Well, I mean, you're talking about hydrogen bombs, not atomic bombs in that animation. You're talking about a level of death that, they've never been tested in any place that has humans in it, and they've never been dropped. So it's literally unprecedented.
They dropped one on the Bikini Atoll?
Well, they tested many of them,
right,
in isolated Pacific settings. And, I don't know where the Soviets tested theirs, but that animation shows something that has never happened even once in history, the dropping of, a hydrogen bomb. And there's music. And a guy puts it on social media to get likes.
I'm sorry. There's so much sociopathic behavior on the internet. It's incredible. I guess we were all becoming inured to it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, we had to not long ago, everybody had to watch The Day After, right? We had to watch those movies about the duck and cover period when, kids had to learn, what to do when the flash comes and how horrible it would be.
And that was during the Reagan administration.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I mean, when they stopped showing those movies to kids, when they stopped trying to scare kids about nuclear war, something went wrong, which we didn't remark on at the time. We should have had a national holiday every year where kids had to watch those damn things. But instead, it's been so long, I have no idea whether my kids or their cohort has.
My kids have never once asked me about nuclear war. Well, yes, and that's not true. One of my oldest has, but it's not like it's a thing on their minds,
Right.
Dude,
I hear more talk on the internet about Yellowstone exploding. The caldera. People come to me whenever they come visit Montana, and I'm only 50 miles from Yellowstone Park, and they're like, "Do you have a plan in case Yellowstone goes up, the largest volcanic caldera on Earth?" And I'm like, "You have a plan if a freaking MIRVed hydrogen bomb carrying missile lands in Macy's Square in New York?" Of course I don't have a friggin' plan, dude.
Yeah, there is no plan. The plan, there's no prepping way out of that whole situation.
They probably didn't want to see a revival of religion, so they stopped showing those movies. Because as a kid, man, I got on my knees after I got a wind of what might happen.
Yeah, and it's funny that they did disappear from the public service like ads in the 90s. I think they were really, there was a lot more invested in the "this is your brain on drugs" kind of ad. The nuclear war thing, well, I guess there was some sense in that dissipating because we no longer had a nuclear enemy at that point officially.
But we're doing our best to make up for lost time.
Yeah. No, it's really disturbing. And then while that's happening, we have Russiagate kind of maybe coming back. I mean, this was amid all the weird news that happened on election night. One of the strangest was Adam Schiff being elected to the Senate, and he, basically came out and he had another like Russia interfered with the election moment on CNN. Let's see if we can listen to this.
Obviously, he is bringing a group of people to disrupt. I mean, that is what Speaker Johnson said. And I'm wondering about how much anybody in Washington is being introspective at all about why there is this kind of opening for disruptors, if not necessarily these individuals. You were censured in the House last year for, in their view, holding positions of power during the Trump presidency as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. And according to them, quote, abusing this trust by saying there was evidence of collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia. And I wonder if you are feeling at all introspective at all about that was, according to the Mueller report and according to your Republican colleagues, an overstatement. And I wonder if you think in any way you help set the table for these disruptors.
First of all, it wasn't an overstatement. There is evidence of collusion. The Trump campaign manager was meeting with Russian intelligence and giving them internal polling data, just to give you one example. And the Mueller report sets all this out.
It does say, quote, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities, which doesn't mean that he didn't, that there weren't meetings, but they didn't find evidence.
Mueller says that too. He says the fact that we didn't find proof beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't mean there wasn't evidence of conspiracy or coordination. So, but look, that's not what people were voting on. People were voting on
just because you haven't been convicted of murder, Adam Schiff, doesn't mean you haven't murdered anyone.
And we didn't persuade the American people that we had a better answer to that question, that we had a better program, agenda, plan, and more than that, I think we failed to persuade the American people that in the voters' point of view, hey, that party, that candidate understands people like me.
Obviously.
Okay, so look,
Whatever.
That's interesting because basically what he's saying is he it's not untrue, and Jake kind of wimped out on asking that question. I guess
Jake was so afraid of actually asking the
I
question
know.
he basically gave the preamble to the Constitution before he did. It's like I almost wanted Schiff to say, "Sock it to me, Jake. I can take it. I already know what the question is, and I've got 1,000 prepared answers for it. So don't get nervous. We're allowed to pretend to be introspective and critical right now for these 3 weeks. So let's just live up to our billing." And okay, so my big overall sense of where we are 2 weeks from the election, besides the fact that the election seems to be going on in places like Chicago still. I mean,
oh my God. And then there's that whole thing about how, the popular vote's still in doubt and everything. And Rick Stengel was going off about that. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
So now we're going to find out whether you're allowed to have a new government in the United States. I mean, over and over, every day is basically a questioning of whether somebody who gets elected president has a right to staff their cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
It's advise and consent in the Senate. That's not advise and reject. It's not, anything other than basically a consulting a consulting condition. But now all of America thinks it has a vote on every friggin' cabinet choice.
So where are they going to make their pitch battle, Walter? Which appointee is going to, because they're only going to put their political capital into one, maybe two of those battles, I think.
No.
Or do you think they're just going to across the board try to deny all of them?
Oh, the Senate?
Yeah.
The Republican Senate?
Well, I mean,
I think Trump, Musk, and all the others should say, "Make my day." I mean, I have not been alive for an election in which government itself, really in a strong way, and its ways and its overreach have been themselves on the ballot. And they were this time. I mean, Reagan versus Carter was not that big a difference when I look back and when I examine it compared to this. This guy's coming on as a major reformist of the biggest government in the most debt in the history of mankind. And he was very clear all down the line about what he wanted, and he got his way from the electorate. And now we're going to find out that the bureaucracy of the United States is a fourth branch of government, and that it's somehow untouchable, and that it can't even be reigned over symbolically by cabinet members, because it's hard enough to administer these agencies, given how many people are lifers and can frustrate you. But you won't even get these symbolic picks. I'm 1776 right now. These people ran explicitly. They won without question, and they now have every constitutional right to staff their government the way they see fit. They also have an array of people around them, which is fairly unprecedented. Maybe it looks like something that Roosevelt would have had, a brain trust, similar, the Musk, Kennedy, Tulsi thing. But every one of them is now becoming public enemy number one. Gabbard, Kennedy, Matt Gaetz, the defense secretary, every one of them. How did Trump manage to just pick the most devilish people on earth? No, what's in question is whether or not a new president of the United States has the right to form a government.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Tulsi first, because this is maybe getting to your point about the significance of this election. I mean, this is a person who we were reporting on as being on a terrorist watch list just a couple of months ago. And trailed by teams of air marshals. who is now going to be the director of national intelligence. So, that, and, something like Jay Bhattacharya being put into the NIH, which is as explicit a rejection of the government bureaucracy as you can get. I mean, both of these people were censored, heavily criticized, and now they're going to be running, in positions of huge responsibility. So we just haven't seen something like this in recent American history. The only thing I guess there are a couple of appointments in the Reagan years that maybe got this kind of response, but the Tulsi thing has been incredible. I mean, the number of people who've been willing to come right out and call her a Russian asset is just astonishing. I mean, we had W. Wasserman Schultz saying it. We
had Joy Behar on the damn View saying essentially that to her face.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Elizabeth Warren, right? And she's been saying some weird things too, by the way. I mean, that whole thing is just odd. But I just can't. Walter, do libel laws no longer mean anything in this country? I'm just kind of astonished at the willingness of people to go to that particular place. Because I mean, like an automatic loss if you go to court and you can't prove that somebody's a Russian spy. That's like the definition of what those laws are for.
It started in the summer of 2016, and it has never stopped. And no one has really paid a price for this Russian asset charge. It's been used of Bernie, it's been used of Jill Stein, it's been used of Tulsi, it's been used of Trump, been used of the General Flynn, it's been used of any number of people. Yeah. It's been used of you, Matt. I've been on your Twitter. I've seen it. It's been used of me. I mean, right. The minute you pipe up about this Ukraine thing, you get an automated, go back to your master Putin. Oh,
right. Yeah.
I know. And it is an industrial scale slander that has never been rebuked, except in a sense by the American voter right now, because they just elected someone who had at his side Tulsi Gabbard. What, he's not going to appoint her? I mean, she was there the whole time when we spoke at that Rescue the Republic thing. She spoke. Kennedy was at his side. Anybody who's surprised by these appointments has a screw loose. And these are the people who helped this guy get elected. They're the people that the Americans wanted to see who elected him. And now suddenly these groups of journalists who are all utterly discredited and have no ratings and who have been wrong about everything have the gall to pipe up about anything. Well, I'm sure they can, but that anybody listens to them for 5 friggin' seconds is shocking to me. Sweep them into the bin. Do they have some hold, some secret molecular structure that makes us unable to turn away from them?
Well, no. I mean, the irrelevance is I think is new. I mean, they're not really having the impact that they had before. It's just amazing that they're trying to cling to this illusion that they still represent some kind of majority view after getting such a gigantic numerical rebuke. But the Tulsi thing amazes me just because you so rarely see somebody make a charge that brazen and not eventually pay a price in court about it. And they've done it with her repeatedly. They remember infamously they timed up a hit piece at NBC to come out the moment she launched her run for the presidency, and it had the Hamilton 68 people in there were cited as sources, and it was a total concoction of a story.
She's active military.
I know. If there was anything to it, she wouldn't be in the military. It's a complete joke. That, and then the Bhattacharya thing really bugs me. It's like, you and I both know Jay is like the most moderate person I know. And when they're depicting him as this fringe corporate lunatic who wants everybody to get sick with COVID, and the Washington Post is coming out today. It's not so much their language; they're kind of putting it on. People like Francis Collins for calling him fringe. But
dude, the people who, according to everything I've read, should be investigated for creating COVID. I'm not saying they did, but they deserve further investigation and are bound to get it. Rand Paul's already vowed to do it. Are the people who are trying to choose the next head of the NIH and think anybody wants to listen to them? Here's the problem. America's at an inflection point. We have a reformer of dimensions we rarely get. We have a set of people who have pretty much tested themselves in the fire. They've been called every name. They've been charged with every treasonous, quality, and they're still there. Now, do they get to be our executive branch or not? That's the question. We elected them. Anything short of that suggests to me that America is not at all even close to what it pretends to be. And it's really going to prove out one way or the other. And if you can at the same time slip a war in while you decide that you can weigh in on the opposing parties' cabinet picks at this almost slanderous level. I mean, Bhattacharya at Stanford, it was accused today, I saw, of taking dark money.
Oh, I know.
An anti-vaxxer, of having all these secret associations. I spent a lot of time with Bhattacharya, and I read him from the beginning of the COVID crisis, as it were, and I was able to check his research and his recommendations versus what happened, and his predictions of economic and social damage from the lockdowns versus what happened. And prophetic almost doesn't cover it, chiefly because he didn't have to be prophetic. He was looking at examples, past behavior and models of what would happen, and was right. He did everything that scientists are supposed to do, and he did it well, as opposed to the people who did it in a kind of made-up fashion, stand 6 feet apart and so on, which we find out they pulled out of their butt. So now they come after this guy. Who's coming after him? Well, it's clear. There are huge corporate interests threatened by this government. This is everything the Democrats always pretended they were going to do and never believed and never did. They're going to go up against the corporate behemoths of America in the military, in farm, in food, and in other industries. The groups which basically have a lock on our regulatory system, which have a revolving door relationship with our government and so on. And this is the response. And I have a problem, which is that I never expect things that I want to happen. But personally, I did want this to happen, because if we can't shine a light on this cavernous system of underground power, then what are we?
Yeah, and right, and we shouldn't look at a gift horse in the mouth either. I mean, I'm kind of in shock by some of these appointments at how on the nose they are in terms of things I would want to see happen. I mean, the nominee for the FCC, Brendan Carr, coming out and saying we must dismantle the censorship cartel and restore free speech rights for everyday Americans. And he had this long thing about going after Google and all these groups. It was basically all of the stuff that we talked about in the Twitter files. And this person is now going to be running the FCC. I'm shocked by it, and and then Tulsi being at the DNI, and I know how she feels about the people have gotten on her case about Syria and some other issues, but her overall feeling about the military is that it seems to me it's just this belief that the entire interventionist project, where we're continually expanding out constantly, in this highly aggressive way it doesn't work, right? And so it's great to see her as the DNI. The other side deserves to have her as the DNI after trying to, paint her as a traitor and everything. This is exactly the way democracy is supposed to work. And you're right. This is what the Democrats promised they would do. But we still have to see if this is what it actually is. I believe very much in the sincerity of Jay and Tulsi, just because I know them. But
Right.
but the rest of it, it's wild to watch. It's amazing.
Jay Bhattacharya, just to give our listeners, a personal view of someone. It's not my job to be antagonistic toward anyone, even though it might seem that's my disposition. Jay is one of the most disarming, hyper intelligent, eloquent, thoughtful, and I wouldn't hesitate to say liberal people, in the sense that he believes in a fair deal for everybody. The essence of his criticism during COVID was that the measures being considered would fall unduly and in a very damaging way on the poor, on minorities, and on children. That was the moral core of his criticism of the policies that were being espoused. He explained to me once that he comes from, his family is from Bengal, a part of India that has a kind of socialist history, really. It's a part of India that is concerned with fairness and inequality and so on. That is its political history. And he drives a car that, a Stanford professor should not have to drive. And
he's personally, like, on the personal humility front. He's openly like a nerd in kind of a funny way. Like, he worships board games. And he's
complicated board games, those Euro games that I can't even understand the rules of.
Yeah, no, they're amazing. And he seemed sincerely, I think, uneasy about a lot of the attention, but I think he felt that it was something that was necessary to try to get a message across, and so he's kind of plowed through that. But yeah, he's in terms of people I've met who've gone into politics, I can't think of somebody else who comes across as like has less of that ugly kind of ambition that you normally see in a politician, right? I mean,
but his big problem is that he hasn't gone into politics. He's there at Stanford making recommendations and leading a rather academic life, and he's become a public figure, and he became one, especially by virtue of being censored and being part of this Supreme Court case against the Biden administration. So he's also a free speech guy, not just a medical truth teller. And the question of whether civilian rule in the United States is possible is what's going on here. I've seen I've seen this Hegseth criticized for not having been part of government already. He doesn't come from the mill of DOD and all the contractors. He doesn't sit on their boards. He doesn't do that. Well, I mean, no, this is the period in which we get to insert ourselves as a people and as a group of civilians into the government. And they're telling us, wait, unless you've already been here, unless you're already corrupted, how dare you apply?
Yeah, what they want is for us to give reverence to the old process for how people became and got to these positions, which meant you had to already have proven yourself, a craven tool of the bureaucratic establishment 5,000 times over before you even get into the hopper to be considered for one of these positions, right? And now they're throwing people in who are sort of open targets of the previous establishment. We've just never seen that before, right?
This is in the country that whose fondest political movie in some ways is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, about a regular person who gets there. Jimmy Stewart looks around and goes, "Whoa, this is crazy! What's going on here?" And I want those people. I want people who are going to go there and, by virtue of not having already been broiled in the broiler of bureaucracy, say, hey, check this out. Guess how they do it? It's crazy.
Right.
I want those stories every single day. And you know, when I was a kid, there was a Wisconsin guy named William Proxmire, I think was his name.
Mhm.
And he used to do a report on government waste. Was it him? I
Yeah.
think it was.
Proxmire, yeah, Bill Proxmire, yeah, I think so.
You know, and he'd say things like, you know, we spent $1.5 million on the researching the mating habits of a turtle in Lake Superior and so on.
Yeah, the Golden Fleece Award. Remember, he used to give that.
Right, and he was a Democrat, as I remember, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, hang on a sec. Yeah, from Wisconsin. Yep.
Right, Democrat, Upper Midwest, progressive senator.
Yeah, and Grassley did kind of the same thing has always done for the Pentagon. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but it was just accepted that you had a right to audit these organizations, and now it's a right-wing thing. I mean, they are not allowed to flip the script this consistently and be this hypocritical and this opaque and this absolutely hostile to a bold shift in political power. And so the question of how Trump or his people should pick their battles, I don't think America picked them so that they would pick their battles.
Right. And look, there's going to be a lot of those kind of Proxmire style reports coming out. I mean, I think, you know, we've heard a few things through the grapevine, all of us, about things the teams are already considering. But there are going to be lots of investigations into lots of areas, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes out. And that's going to be super interesting. It might be kind of an ugly time for former government officials.
Dude, we have been regaled with this concept of transparency, rhetorically at least, for you know how long now, and then the prospect of actual transparency arrives, and it's looked at as heresy. You know, in some ways, I think what we've seen is not just a political revolt, but what you would call an anti-clerical revolt. And that means a revolt against the priest class, against the class that holds itself out as having special knowledge, special access, and special understanding. And the United States is built on the notion that that group that has some right to permanent rule due to expertise is actually a danger.
Right.
And we don't have a priest class, and this governmental priest class is watching itself maybe be challenged in a way it hasn't been for a long time, and it's not reacting well, and it's got the press on its side because half the people you see on TV are married to one of them, and that's literally true. They are married to them,
which is it's so funny that people don't. I mean, I think they do guess at it, but the extent to which intermarriage is such a major factor in Washington, if people knew the numbers there, like how many people had a spouse who was a lobbyist in the same area where they work, or, you know, was a reporter who has a spouse working in the same field that person, he or she covers. It's such a common thing. And, you know, it's one of the reasons I think that people just want to clean out this whole mess and start over. But
the question America wants an answer to, and it wants a definitive answer, is: does the government belong to us, or do we belong to it? And there's only two ways to answer that question. Some fancy, sophisticated fusion of the two will not do, because in every power relationship, there cannot be perfect balance. There never is, not in nature or anywhere else. Water doesn't just sit there. It flows down, or, you know, in some east or west. There is always a differential, and we need to know, because the whole system is based on the idea that it belongs to us. And if we find out otherwise, things will be different.
Yep. Couple other things. The Guardian had an interesting. Let's see if I can find this. I didn't. We're not gonna be able to show you the graphic, unfortunately, because I don't have the page open. But the sort of blatant, naked monetizing of the Trump phenomenon is back again. The Guardian put out a message saying how the Guardian will stand up to 4 more years of Donald Trump, and they've put out a fundraising goal. So they say they've got $2.6 million reached out of their $4 million fundraising goal for opposing Donald Trump. So I'm wondering how much of this is there's going to be, like, you know, we're not the ruling group anymore, so you need to give us more money. Now that we screwed up so much in the last 4 years.
What's this head of the Lincoln Project guy, or at least the face of it? This Rick Wilson, I think is his name.
Rick Wilson. Has he surfaced?
Dude,
already?
he vowed that they're going to organize their own intelligence gathering operation.
Oh, that's awesome! I didn't see that.
Yeah, and you can contribute. And they're going to do high level sort of government quality investigations of the enemy.
That is fantastic.
Of the individual, yes.
Wow.
If you give them enough money. I mean, this is the new televangelism. It really is. That is the new job for some of these people. Get Rachel up on stage healing people, you know.
Laying hands.
I got a message. I got a message from the Southern Poverty Law Center that there's a racist in this audience who doesn't want to be a racist anymore. And it's in his forehead. And if come on up.
Yeah, do an altar call. Come on, let's come on down. Right? I mean, yeah, we're gonna have to have that. They did have that in 2020. Remember the whole foot washing thing?
Oh my Lord.
I keep forgetting how many crazy fucking things happened in the last 8 years. That whole period where white people were having their feet washed to excise their sins, and that was sort of at the same time as the kente cloth scarves thing.
The kneeling, the black boxes, and that's why I call it an anti-clerical revolt, because those were religious rituals. I mean, that no one can say that they had any scientific basis.
Right.
They were entirely symbolic, and they attempted to conjure with some sort of mystical force. And now these people are out, and their religion looks stupid, and they're going to reformat it, try to raise money, try to do this thing that all religions do, which is indict you for your sins and promise to relieve you of the burden for a price.
Yep. Yeah. Just so that people can remember what this was. Let's see. Police officers wash feet of black pastors in North Carolina. So that happened. Should we do a quick wellness check on Rob Reiner?
Yeah.
Here we go. He has not, it appears, tweeted yet. This was his last tweet. Kamala Harris will be 47th president of the United States. So that doesn't look too good for him. But let's see. Keith Olbermann has been more active. He looks sort of healthily crazy, I think. Let's see. This is everybody's mad at Joe Scarborough. What are your thoughts on that whole phenomenon?
So okay. I don't want to see any of these people revived. I don't want to see their shows keep going on television. I certainly don't want anybody to keep watching them. And so I hesitate to even pronounce their names correctly, because I really, really think that they are a drag on our reality that can't be underestimated. Nevertheless, just to prove that the guy's a complete phony, he goes down to Mar-a-Lago.
It's awesome.
To seek what exactly? I mean, does he want Trump as a guest? Was he always a fake, and now he's going back to his home, handler? Is he going back to his handler and saying, okay, Donald, I made such a fool out of your opposition that people didn't want to be a member of it anymore. I'd like that check.
I mean, you would need like the Russell Crowe from A Beautiful Mind to keep track of all the different incarnations of Joe Scarborough there have been since 2015. Remember, he started off as Trump's best sort of media window.
Dude, I remember in 2012 when I was working for the New Republic, I went down to Charlotte and big convention, very expensive convention. I mean, we're in the Intercontinental or the Four Seasons, one of those top line hotels. New Republic had a little party, and there in a side room was, John Kerry, resplendent, with his stature and the glow of outdoor activities, which he's so famous for mastering. And he was talking to Scarborough. And every once in a while it's really important to see these people in the flesh, because you're not sure what level of egotism you're dealing with until you see them actually around other people. And you go, oh my God, like few Chinese emperors had as high an opinion of themselves as Joe Scarborough and John Kerry together at the Intercontinental Hotel in a side room, not even deigning to be part of the main party, just sort of putting themselves off in a niche with better lighting and different canapes. And I was like, wow, like this guy's like kind of a nobody, Scarborough. It's 2012. You would have, former Republican congressman, he just starting out, I think, at TV, and he was already imperial,
Oh, yeah. 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 Imperial and imperious at the same time. And yeah, I grew up around newsrooms. So as a kid, I was always the anchor man passing me in the hallway. I was always sort of awed by the sort of I don't know, the air around an anchorman is like it's like a visible property, the disruption in the force. There should be a cologne that's called Anchorman, to convey like the scale of the manliness that you're feeling in their presence. But some of them are just like normal, bright people who just happen to have great hair and can deliver, can read well. And then some of them are just complete lunatics. Who with no sense of self-awareness whatsoever. It's probably similar to Hollywood actors, right? Because you come across the same thing there, but anchor people are different.
Dude, we need to do a show where we just reminisce, like drop out of this whole stream of current events and just be two old guys telling weird stories. So Tom Brokaw, who, I grew up watching. I grew up in the age of the Anchorman, dude, the national Anchorman, Cronkite, Brokaw, Huntley and Brinkley, etc.
They were the getting ladiest people in the world. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Dude, but Tom Brokaw, who to his credit is a kid from, South Dakota, and a lot of those broadcasters, they were Midwesterners because they had an accent that, was pleasing to the entire country. Right. And so he moved out to Montana many years ago and had a ranch. And and he hung out. And there was a bar in this town of maybe 100 near his ranch. And it was a rootin' tootin' bar. And I still drank in those days. And one night I go into the bar and it's crowded, and the pool table and all the motorcycle guys and their girls and everything. And all of a sudden I heard somebody say something like, I'll have a beer, and it was the first time I'd heard Tom Brokaw's voice live. And it was just like, I'll have a beer. it was like God, or if you heard God order a beer, you know. And my head went around, but they walk the earth, you know.
They do, yeah, totally, yeah. Okay, so I've got some. First of all, my father, what he did do some anchoring, but not much. They figured out pretty quickly that that's not his thing. In fact, he actually made the news. He made the news in Boston once for anchoring a show without socks, and got in trouble for that. But you know, being a newsreader was never really his thing. But he did do he worked at Dateline for a long time. And he was fascinated by Stone Phillips, so he could do a great Stone Phillips face. So I used to work on that with him at home. But he told me, he's like, don't ever fuck with Stone Phillips. Like the dude is a great athlete, right? So he apparently was the quarterback at Yale, apparently. So he showed up at the Michael Jackson trial that I happened to be covering at the same time my father was covering, and Stone Phillips was whipping a football around, and you know, with the hair perfectly in place. Like those guys, their hair is never out of place. Have you noticed that? Anyway.
Frank Gifford.
Right, exactly. It's just like a helmet. Anyway, he could really sling it. That dude had an amazing arm. But yeah, they have this aura. They're like sort of beyond people. Some of them. And some of them are just crazy, like Bill O'Reilly.
But Joe just dumped his aura all over the floor of Mar-a-Lago.
Oh my God, yeah.
And like I say, does MSNBC think that they can revive this guy as some, you know, go between Trump and liberal America? I mean, what are they expecting? Or is he going to a new network and, you know, he's going to come out of his chrysalis and be yet another, you know, he's like Madonna, he's the Madonna of pseudo anchors.
That's right. Yeah. He's going to go through his express yourself period now. And I think it's a deal that was made after, remember that thing after the assassination attempt when they yanked his show for that one day?
Right.
I bet there was some kind of conversation that was like, if he wins, you're going to go and get in your knees and, you know, get him back in the air or something like that, right? Either that or this is just a play on their part to try to get audience back again. I don't know, but it's fascinating. They went all the way from being, you know, having Trump on all the time to kicking his ass for years, then being complete Biden apologists to completely demanding that Biden leave instantaneously. I mean, it's so many permutations. It's actually kind of impressive, don't you think?
We'll be the last people commenting on these people. They're going to have to keep them on the air just so that we can make fun of them, because I really recommend that all of America turn them off. Like a complete ratings blackout for these people would be one of the best things that happened, because apparently your vote is only provisionally effective. But I promise you that TV ratings, if you've ever seen network, get things done.
Well, do you think, I mean, is the market going to come back for TV and the news business? I think that's kind of an interesting question. It has to, doesn't it? I mean,
well, you know, I was talking to my friend Greg Gutfeld the other day, and I'm going to go on his show on Friday. He and his wife are having a baby this week, and my prayers are with them. But apparently, his ratings are soaring, and he gave me numbers, and I don't think I'm at liberty to say what they are, but you know, a big fraction of 100%. Okay. And they appear to be the ratings boosted by people abandoning the other shows.
Right.
So, you know, they're the people coming from the Jimmys and from the Colbert world. And so there will be survivors. There will even be thrivers. But if the market doesn't get an echo of what happened in the election, it will have been a failure on the people who really think on the part of the people who really think this is important. You can't go watching the same people. You just can't. You can't be giving the money to the same groups, and the potential disappearance of pharma ads on television. I saw the other day that in some news hours on cable, 70% of the advertising comes from pharma.
I've heard 75 from. I have a producer friend who told me it was more. It was higher even.
Can you imagine? And those are the people, those pharma supported companies, newscasts that are fighting these Trump appointments. Like America, just go back to the 70s and read about Ralph Nader and people like this, and realize that the fight you're seeing has nothing to do with your own good. It is pure money versus reform.
Right, and there are gonna be a lot of people who, if this is true about RFK and the HHS, right? If he's going to be the secretary, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to have a lot of opinions about some of his views. But there's also
the idea that this is the first California experience our health bureaucracy will have. Dude, everything I know about health comes from hanging out in Santa Monica. Everything that I learned bad comes from growing up in Minnesota, and everything I learned good comes from hanging out in Santa Monica. The idea that they haven't had a presence at the national level with their point of view on what's good to eat and what's bad to eat and which drugs work and which is ridiculous. It's like we haven't let, it's like not letting soldiers into the Defense Department to not have people from Santa Monica in charge of health.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It would be like leaving Raytheon out of the Joint Chiefs office or something like that. But
there's exactly one industry in the United States besides pro sports, which depends on how healthy and young and so on you look. And that's entertainment. And
right.
This guy has the collective wisdom of Hollywood, plus all these other areas that he's importing to Hollywood. To Washington. We should be grateful. We're all going to be juicing and fricking,
Well, also, there are going to be debates about things that we haven't debated, like, how many people really need to be mandated to have the HPV virus, vaccine, right? I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, this whole idea of making sure that boys get it, I don't know about that. I mean, there's all these conversations that we haven't had, or the medication of kids with ADHD and stuff. These were debates that we used to have pretty regularly in liberal media, and now they've all been they all code as right wing, which is bizarre. So it's like everything else,
Absolutely. The legacy institutions of America, which managed to get themselves into these cozy regulatory relationships with this gigantic government, both at the state and federal level, are now in question. They should be in question every 15 years as a matter of policy, but instead you have to fight a pitched battle in the swing states to even bring the questions up now.
Right.
And then the minute you win, you have all of the media that is supported by the very institutions which are in question, fighting back against
about it,
and calling you names and so on. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a competition for the American mind and our sort of daily life like this. Most presidencies don't propose to affect what you eat,
right,
or your medicine or whatever. But we realized during COVID that these people, when they want to, can reach into your freaking employer and tell you what to take, can make sure you can go in and out of the hospital or not. And that wake-up call must not be wasted, in my mind. Yeah, even if we all look at it and come and say, oh, we were living in the best of all possible worlds all along, we would never change. Well, at least that would be an informed decision rather than one that was just imposed on us by these
Well, yeah, that's exactly right, and that's why the Bhattacharya thing is so infuriating. They're calling him, fringe and contrarian, when the polls show that the majorities of Americans ended up thinking lockdowns were a bad idea for exactly the reasons that he said, and there are pluralities of people believe exactly what he believes, that the disease was dangerous for the very elderly and people with comorbidities, and we need to target protection for those folks. Sort of basic common sense things that people figured out about the disease, because they could tell that their kids weren't dying from this, but they were suffering from being home from school for so long. And the wake up call that this could all be imposed on people, and that they were trying to even impose more, right? The vaccine mandates, employer mandates, all these things.
Dude,
I think that freaks people out.
More than freaked me out. They made me have to lie in order to go into restaurants.
Right.
I had to lie in order to go to a lot of things which are necessary for my for my income. And they forced it on me. I will never forgive that, because I made a decision about all my COVID stuff based on, my usual ability to research things, talk to experts, and my rather privileged position as a member of the press who has access to very knowledgeable people. So it was at least as informed as anybody else's, but I was forced to lie. And that's never happened before. I mean, it happened in Vietnam during the draft. People, were fugitives from their own government, but COVID made people fugitives. And the idea that our military readiness was affected by willingness to take this thing. I mean, and so, as I say, the pent up demand for truth and for reform and for at least knowledge, greater knowledge of these non-transparent institutions just came out. And if it's going to be frustrated by the very institutions that profit from these groups through advertising and other forms of support and largesse, then America has to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still, I have to feel skeptical that this is what it looks like, because I just always feel disappointed in the end with government. But so far, this all makes sense. This is what the election was for nominations like this. This is what his voters wanted. It would be, as you said, it would be crazy if he nominated some other people, and it's going to be fascinating to watch how this all plays out. But so far, yeah, you're right. There's going to be a battle to see whether you're even allowed to do this, which is it's already interesting.
So the New York Times the other day did what will be an infamous fact check on Kennedy over the question of whether the ingredients of Fruit Loops are different in the United States.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
Than they are in Canada, and it was a case of the prose and the tone of the prose completely contradicting the content of the prose. The fact check was basically negative. There's no real difference between Fruit Loops, except that the ones in Canada are colored with natural, natural tinctures, while the American ones are manufactured chemical dyes. Oh, and there are all these other ingredients in the American Fruit Loops, something butylate and whatever. And the guy got to the end, whoever wrote it, if it wasn't AI, got to the end and thought he had made some point. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Today I saw another one. I don't know if it was from the same set of fact checks of the seed oil controversy. Are seed oils somehow injurious to the human being or healthy? Well, the Times concluded they're quite healthy, and it did it on this basis. Experts say. Experts say.
That's one of those phrases that people are I think we're going to have to retire. We have to make that list. But yeah, here's the Fruit Loops fact check. Mr. Kennedy has singled out Fruit Loops as an example of a product with too many artificial ingredients, questioning why the Canadian version has fewer than the US version, but he was wrong. The ingredient list is roughly the same, although Canada's has natural colorings made from blueberries and carrots, while the US product contains red dye 40, yellow 5, and blue 1, as well as butylated hydroxytoluene. I don't know. How do I spell it? How do I pronounce it? Or BHT, a lab-made chemical that is used for freshness, according to the ingredient label. All they did is read the label. It's hilarious.
I mean, anyway. It's head spinning, but people think I'm against everything, and I'm not. I am very much for a constant check of our bullshit because it piles up so quickly. It's like blizzard. You get stuck in a blizzard and suddenly the snow's up to your windows. Well, you get stuck in one of these bureaucratic, regulatory, and corporate backwaters, and all of a sudden, the water's coming in through the windows. And the more I read these criticisms of Trump, especially on the Kennedy front, because they're so specific and they have to do with what people eat and drink every day, the more I think we've been drowning in stuff for so long, and we haven't checked for a long time. And it's so funny that the organic movement and all the other food reform movements, the farm to table and so on, which were so wonderfully celebrated among the upper classes, are now apparently disavowed because hydroxybutylate toluene for freshness is probably something your kids should be having before they go off to school every morning.
They should be mainlining it, right?
Also, how many red dyes are there? You know what I mean? It's red dye 40. What about red dye 38? Did they reject it because it's not red enough, or because it kills you? When they have, it's like Formula 409. What happened to the 408 formulas that came before it? Were they not as good? What about the other red dyes? Are they in other shit? Is it stuff that we've shipped to like El Salvador?
There's got to be a band called Red Dye something, right? There's got to be a punk band called like Red Dye 6 or Red Dye 49 or something like that. Yeah.
What happened to Red Dye 1? Red Dye 1. It's like the first, it's like Little Boy and the first atomic weapons.
That's right, Fat Boy and Little Man or whatever it is. Fat Man and Little Boy, or I can't remember what.
Yeah. It's just a little red.
Right.
If you want to see frickin' red, try 49.
I wonder how many, like, is there something like yellow dye 10,054 or something like that? I mean, it would be fantastic to find out how many of these there are.
Well, one of the yellow dyes is an arch enemy of Kennedy. And as I say, once again, like, I don't care if America finally decides that it wants to eat and drink red dye 40, in gallon containers, but that we're forcing papers to do fact checks on the ingredients in Fruit Loops, that's victory.
It is, and it's funny. And you know what? I'm just going to let go and enjoy it for a little bit longer. Look, I have a tendency to go into neurosis mode about all this stuff, but it's been satisfying to watch the freak out about all these things. Because these people who are so imperious and have been so merciless in conveying their lofty judgments about things for so long, they just don't know what to do now.
They're the same people who passed the laws and were the consumer activists that make us list the ingredients. Okay.
I know.
So if we list the ingredients, do we not have a right to analyze them individually?
One would think. We should at least discuss it. Yeah. But they apparently don't feel that way. So anyway, it's been it's been an eventful. We didn't even get to talk about Matt Gaetz or Pete Hegseth or anything like that, but we'll get to all that. I mean, the thing about the Pentagon is we're going to find out pretty quickly how intense they are about actually pushing this military confrontation, and whether Trump is going to make a fuss about that early. Because if this thing escalates more,
Matt,
yeah.
Remember the rumors? I don't know how much this was verified about Milley assuring the Chinese that if Trump in his lame duck period tried anything, he would tell them first.
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Remember the heroic Milley, who was not going to let the madman do anything last minute. What? I don't believe there is a Democratic Party anymore. You can't hold those two things in your head. You can't talk about pushing missiles into Russia and celebrate the person who is going to restrain adventurism during Trump's lame duck. That's not. They can't be contained within the same space. That's matter and antimatter, and you want to celebrate them both. The endless exposure of this kind of thing is what I look forward to. It's what I was made for. And frankly, it's what America has demanded in the only way it has, which was a total national plebiscite.
Right. This was the only way to knock all this stuff back. And it's been done. And it's kind of an amazing thing. It still hasn't registered the gravity of all this.
Whoever said if voting mattered, they'd make it illegal.
Right. Yeah, that was Twain, right? Yeah.
It's one of the Twainisms that's most dubious. But you almost go right now, are we going to find out it mattered or not? And, I'm actually in a strange position because I don't know that all of Trump's appointees are to my taste or not, but on certain issues, it was a 0 or 1 choice, and free speech was one of them. You would simply not have gotten an FCC chairman making a statement even before they're in power about this issue, and the other side talked about it not at all in the campaign, and so
they denied it even existed. I mean, one of the stories about Jay had the word censored in quotes, as if that was a crazy conspiratorial claim of his.
This Dr. Lucky Tran, I think is his name, who's been coming out against him and has already blocked me on Twitter, who said that the mainstream media is sane washing Jay Bhattacharya.
That term's got to go.
Sane washing him. I deserve to be sane washed. Jay Bhattacharya should be administering sane washings to the rest of us if my exposure to him is any guide. But so they're calling him insane, and they use disinformation in that same piece and dark money. And they said that he contradicts, quote, the real experts. They used every one of their ATACM missiles, linguistically in that one tweet.
And one of his media in the tweet, right? Yes, I forgot.
Yeah.
And elsewhere, they talked about how Joe Rogan likes him, which is another, blow against him. But yeah, it's been wild. Well, crazy stuff. Any other things that we need to get to before we retire this episode? Let's see.
Well, let me think, Matt. There was the UFC fight on Saturday night.
You know what? That was embarrassing, man. I'm such a fan of Mike Tyson. That was just.
I'm not talking about the Tyson.
Oh, the UFC thing. Oh yeah.
The UFC fight. And I mean, in all of its literary comparisons of Trump to this and Trump to that, the media always avoids the obvious ones. He was in Madison Square. He was just back in Madison Square Garden, but apparently it's been cleansed of its Nazi, atmosphere. But in any case, you saw Trump come in with his crew walking behind him, Elon Musk, whatever, Speaker Johnson bringing up the rear, like, Mikey on the Life cereal commercial, the kid brother, and he walks into this thunderous applause and then at the end of this fight, the champion hands him his, does the dance in the ring and hands him a belt. Now that is all new. Okay. And that has literary precedence. If you've seen Gladiator. Okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah.
This is absolutely Roman, what we're seeing. If you want to get fancy about it and really call a spade, you're looking at a revival of the Roman virtues in public, of strength, discipline, courage, and so on. Whether you believe he actually possesses them or merely enacts them superficially, doesn't matter. That is what we're seeing a celebration of. And if America wants to actually take its own temperature, the revival of Roman posture and Roman virtues and this sort of gladiatorial combat in which the victorious gladiator goes to the emperor and hands him, I mean, screw all the bullshit Hitler stuff. This is interesting. It goes unremarked on.
Yeah, no, it is. It has a little bit of Dwayne Elizondo, Hector Mountain Dew Camacho in it too, but yeah, that kind of WWE meets the Roman Colosseum thing. Yeah, definitely. It's a new thing. It's a new way of talking about the presidency and understanding it. I think it's just beyond the comprehension of a certain kind of college-educated intellectual, right?
The Trump posse is the most fascinating American pop culture phenomena in years. I know women who are obsessed with it, and it's a fairly male phenomena, except with Tulsi there, who I have it on good authority from people who've been in the gym with her, can kick everybody's ass. I mean, she is like hardcore apparently in the physical arts.
There are a lot of funny tweets about how she's, she realized she's too good looking to be a Democrat, but
but in any case, the Trump posse right now has the nation transfixed, and people like Jake Tapper think they're going to F with the Trump posse. No, they have no idea what's going on in their own country. They have no idea what it feels like to watch a president come in gladiatorial splendor to a roaring audience, be surrounded by, and this is the richest man, and this is the smartest man, and this is the Vikram Swami, the perfect man, and and this is Tulsi Gabbard, the toughest Amazon, and they're still talking about I don't know, bureaucratic niceties and who should be what. Like, dude, the Avengers just walked in. Didn't you not notice that?
Yeah, I mean that's what they're going for sure. Yeah, and they're we got some weird people in the comments tonight.
What are they saying?
There's somebody who keeps saying Derek Chauvin, free Derek Chauvin, and all this stuff. I'm not sure, but there's another person who's anyway.
That's an old tactic. Where I'm surprised we haven't gotten Hail Hitler or something.
Yes, this is the person who's saying, did any of you read Griftopia? Saying like, I must have gone through some kind of transformation. Look, Griftopia was about gigantic pluralistic oligopolistic banking institutions who were in an unnatural codependent relationship with a government that made them immune to the market while everybody else had to suck eggs. And that's exactly what some of these appointments are about battling, whether it's the censorship cartel or the health the big pharma. At the very least, this represents voter anger towards those big sectors, and there's nothing out of place about this. This is the people who just lost were the Wall Street candidates. So I don't know where that criticism is coming from.
You just had a major presidential candidate run on a Bitcoin platform, people. Has anybody grappled with that? Is anybody really talking about that in a way that I think is worthy of its importance? An alternative form of money was endorsed by a presidential candidate, and the value of that money since his election has soared. We don't talk about reality in America. We're down in these grooves, and these people who are, special interest spokespeople disguised as news types go and grind the same corn to a fineness that is absolutely infinite, while huge things happen. You've got a Bitcoin president. Do you have any idea what that means? Is anyone explaining that to you? No, they're not. It's not even worthy of comment. And in terms of our list of banned words, grift has to be almost at the top.
Yeah, no, that's that they won't let go of that one, unfortunately. But well, maybe they will. I don't know.
What does it mean? Somebody who makes money?
Yeah, apparently it differs somehow from what everybody else in media does.
Right.
Yeah,
I have
on an institutional scale.
I have a job. You have a grift.
Right. Yeah. And especially, it's so offensive because what CNN and especially MSNBC did in the last 15 years or so is they just sort of openly said we're gonna chuck all of our standards in order to suck up to a demographic, because that's our only business model that could possibly work. And that's a gigantic, huge corporate grift, like done out in the open.
Well, so Matt, the way you used it of people who make fortunes, okay? But what it's come to mean is a kind of influencer who makes good money, but doesn't, get super rich.
Right.
The people who are accused of grifting are always somewhat like upper middle class, but not titans. And so it's sort of the relationship.
Buy a second car.
Right, with his grift money.
Yeah.
But it's like the word cult is to religion. A cult is just a niche religion that's especially intense, but is somehow, inferior. And there's something about grift, the way it's used now, that it's kind of déclassé, But anyway, when you used it was used as a new word for corruption and conning people at a really vast scale. Now it's descended, and it's something people use of like podcasters.
Right. Yeah. Who are somehow that, scraping by, well, scraping, that's the wrong word. The idea that making a little bit more than, what you used to make, I don't know. That's the big crime now is, whereas, what journalism has been doing for ages is selling its soul to lose money, which is to me an even worse crime. But anyway,
it's been an influence operation. The ratings are going around for CNN and MSNBC, and they're shockingly bad in just the last few weeks, especially. And yet these people make tens of millions of dollars. That's an influence buying operation, as far as I can tell. They are put out there to be liaisons with the powers that be, and their salaries do not reflect their value.
It's like if you get a massage and it's costs $1,000, is probably more than a massage. That's when you have an anchor person that's making $25 million. There's something else going on there. usually, because they're not making that kind of money or profit. But anyway, Walter, this was fun, and thanks everybody for turning out. We had a very, despite our this totally unacceptable format that everybody thinks sucks.
Dude, this is called the Brady Bunch format. You know,
the Brady Bunch format. We had a larger than usual crowd tonight, so you know, there are going to be some tough decisions that we're going to have to make probably in the interim, but we'll see. We'll try to get this straightened out technically. But thanks everybody for coming out, and Walter, thanks for hanging out and talking tonight.
best part of my week.
All right, take care, everybody.